Yeah, this is just to give an example of even a small tire, how catastrophic a tire failure can be. And then you have, and that's not a whole lot of volume you're looking at there as compared to a tear tire.
And this, look at this situation.
And they're not aware of the danger is the problem. Sure, many of you have seen this, our little experiment. Can't even begin to, like, there's no way video will convey how loud and impactful that was. I mean, it sounded like we were quite a distance away in the shop when it went off, and it was like a bomb went off. It shook the whole building.
So the bottom line is we really got to watch these cheap tires that are out there and the age of tires. And we even have a board member that experienced this firsthand. Scott, tell us about this situation.
So yeah, we were basically just airing up what essentially was a spare tire for the team. It wasn't even one that we used. Normally it was just our spare that we kept at the shop there. And getting ready to go into the summer season, and we just want to make sure that we had everything ready to go. So aired the tire up. It was kind of low, and not up against the rims. It had kind of leaked down. So we were airing it up, getting it to seat against the edge of the rims and stuff like that, and it did. But what we noticed is that it's a two-piece rim, and there was some air leaking out of the two pieces, and a couple of those bolts were loose. So no big deal. Roll the tire up close to the shop there where we could get at it with we had a little bucket there that we kept those, spare pieces of those bolts and washers there for the rims, and took that out there, and we were just tightening those bolts down that had kind of come loose, and blam, the part of that tire there, you can see it just slipped over the edge of the wheel, and all that air came out and threw me back about 5 feet into the side of Roger's truck there that you could see that was parked next to the tire. And basically, you can see there that damage to that tire was stuff that we couldn't see. And when we started using that tire, it didn't show that. And so, when it developed or whatever, we never noticed that. And so that right there that's what allowed the tire to slip over the rim. You can kind of see the marks on the left side of where that damage is, where it just slipped right over the rim and drug some of the powder coating with it. But cost me about half of my, or a third of my skull, and a bunch of other damage, and a hand that's partially unusable, and a lot of other things. I'm thankful that I'm still here. But one of the things that I've learned through this, and by the way, this is a tire that I bought for us to use. It was a 6-ply tire. It matched other 6-plies that we use. And me being the dorky engineer, I wanted to have, the 6-plies with the 6-plies on one side versus the other. So I bought that tire to use. It didn't look bad when I bought it. But moving forward, this is, as you can see, it's an older 6-ply. I don't think we need to be using tires that are over 23 years old. I think we've developed in respect as a motorsport that we are, that we need to be using more up-to-date stuff. You go to a demolition derby cars run newer tires than the 23 years old. And so I just want us to learn what I've went through and basically make some changes as to how a lot of us do things. And that if we got a nice piece of equipment, maybe use tires that are a little bit newer than 20 some odd old fertilizer spreader tires that have been wandering around in fields.
Yeah, very quickly, I want to point out that some of the issue was caused by like some of this cracking that you see on the sidewall allows moisture to get down in the tire, and it gets down into the bead. So the bead rust, there are metal cords in there, and the bead burst, and that allowed the bead to expand and slip over the rim and cause all this issue. These type of things are really not visible from the outside, and unfortunately a lot of times we see a lot of used tires for sale. And I can tell you from personal experience that a lot of times the best looking tires that you find, at on a farm or something, the reason that they look good is because the tire was damaged and they took it out of service. This was a big issue at the time. And as a result of Scott's accident, we investigated more, and we found that was more common than we realized, that there had been other cases that had just not gotten as much attention. And then cases where tires have let go on this, while a truck was on display and things like that. And we recognize that, again, if it can happen, it eventually will. We feel that we need to do something to keep this from happening and hurting somebody in the future. We recognize that this is probably not a popular idea, but when you consider the investment, a modern monster truck where you're talking a couple $100,000 investment, and yet some guys feel that it's okay to use a $300 tire on something that, that will spend tens of thousands of dollars on things that are not necessarily as potentially dangerous as this. I think the time has come for us to implement at least some basic rules to move this forward that we can improve upon over time. But we spent a lot of time talking about this issue. We've been talking about this issue for several years now, and obviously COVID played a role in pushing this back some. And there was a lot of pushback just from the rumors that we were, of things that we were talking about doing. People saying, "Oh, this is going to be the end of monster truck industry because they want to do away with used tires." Like, we're not. First of all, we're not saying we want to get rid of used tires, but we need to do something. We can't, in good conscience, allow something that's a legitimate concern to go unchecked, through many, many discussions. And I'm sorry, I kind of took over here, Scott, but I know it's because we're a
You
little
go right
short on
ahead.
time. And I think that we need to get to the point of this, these bead issues and everything. And then the other issues like overinflation issues. We found this has happened so many times, tires, people, and, a lot of us are guilty of it. You put the air check on the tire and you get a phone call and you step away. And the next thing you know, there's a catastrophic failure. And we've had numerous cases of trailers being blown apart, like what you see here. I mean, these things are bombs when that happens. So, and then not to mention the numerous fatalities there's been in the agricultural business related to these things. And again, so then when we see these tires for sale, in various places that are, who knows where they came from, a lot of times people don't even know how to inspect them. And that's not even counting the fact that some of these weaknesses are not visible externally. So we tried to come up with a way to address this. What can we do? And the only thing we've been able to come up with at this point is a date range for the tire, right? Some type of a way to draw a line in the sand, right? And say a tire, and I'm going through the pictures rapidly because we're almost out of time. And this is something I feel is very, very important. I think Scott's the one that did the research on this, on how the tires are coded based on their date range.
That's correct.
And we recognize that that could be complicated. Looking at it like, okay, how do I reconcile this? How do I look at this date and understand, well, what is this telling me? And we understand that could be overwhelming. But one thing that stood out is that in the year 2000, the codes changed. They went from a 3-digit code to a 4-digit code. So we said, well, maybe that's the key. If you see 4 digits, you know it's at least from the year 2000 up. Where if it's got a 3-digit code, you know it's prior to 2099 and back. Could go all the way back to the 70s for all we know, or actually late 60s.
Yeah.
And again, there's no way to know what the history of these things are, what, how long they sat out, why they were taken out of services, all these different things. So what we're suggesting and we're contemplating implementing is a date limit and say, you know what, at least if we go to a requirement of a 4-digit code, we know that the tire is maximum of 23 years old. It's not a perfect system, but at least it's a start that maybe we can work from there and maybe develop a better system. But at least it's something. At least we feel like we're doing something about this issue. On top of that, on the inflation issues, we've researched regulators that could be put in line on the compressor lines that will bleed off. You could set it. I mean, it's actually a useful thing because you could set it, that's another thing that we glossed over quickly that I want to point out is that when this failure happened with Scott, that tire only had like 12 PSI, if I'm not mistaken, right? 12 PSI when it went off.
It was not very high.
Yeah. So it doesn't require, you're talking a lot of volume where we don't need a lot of pressure. And the thing is, a lot of these modern tires that we're running run much higher pressures than that. So, the idea of having a regulator that's set, like you set it and forget it, you set it with a screwdriver or something, is a good idea because then you can lock the chuck on the tire and walk away and you're not going to overinflate that tire. It's just reducing the chances of something happening by accident. We try to focus on the things that are within our control, not the things that are outside of our control.